Hello and welcome to the Game Mess Game Club. Today we are discussing the Boomer Shooter Warhammer 40K Boltgun. This is from Arik Digital, Arik or Roche, I don't know. This game was released in 2023 in just about every platform you can imagine. Like I said, this is a modern Boomer shooter, so it's a newer first-person shooter, but made in that kind of classic Doom or Quake style back when we were still using a lot of pixel art and things like that in these FPSs. I have a pretty big affinity for these games. Of course, I do. I don't think that shocks anybody. I think we did at least do Dark Forces on here before, so we have done a legitimate Boomer shooter, or maybe I just played through that on my own for fun. I can't remember, but I know I played Dark Forces not too long ago. So that's something from actually that time. It's interesting, though, to see all these new games popping off like this. So I guess maybe my first question for my assembled guests and fellow game messers is how they feel about the Boomer shooter genre. If they played many of them, newer or older. Matt, go ahead.
As a fellow old, I've been playing these since they started, so I very much enjoy the boomer shooter genre. I've played a bunch of the newer ones as well. So yeah, they're a good thing.
Kovnam, thank you so much for subscribing with Prime. Also, I'm supposed to turn those alerts off for that. But thank you so much, Kovnam. I appreciate it. Yeah, Matt, I kind of grew up with this genre. I remember, I kind of remember Wolfenstein 3D popping off, and then Doom, of course, was the biggest thing in the world. Then, Duke Nukem 3D not long after that, and things like Quake and whatnot, right? So it was always a lot of fun. Adam, GC, go ahead.
Yeah, the extent of my PC gaming in the 90s was pretty much just screwing around with games. And it wasn't the good games. It was usually just like whatever shitty free demo came bundled in with Windows. So I'm not terribly well versed with this stuff. I messed around with some Unreal Tournament and stuff. But yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. And in fact, this game actually got me on a real big kind of boomer shooter kick. I just went back over the last week and picked up Doom 2016, and that's been a lot of fun too.
I do love Doom 2016. It is that was what was so great about that game, was that it did bring back some of those boomer shooter kind of mentality, right? Where it's not a cover based shooter. It's not like this, like, be real careful and, hide a lot because your health's going to regen. So you got to, be, kind of poking your head out, you're shooting, you're poking your head out, shooting.
Yeah,
This game, like original Doom and Doom 2016, it's like you need to run around. You got to be running around to sort of dodge shots, and maybe you can get health pickups and things like that. And this definitely captures that feel. Demonic Marine 117, go ahead.
Uh, I would call myself a long time shooter junkie. I've been playing boomer shooters for God knows forever now. Like, I played the build the Trinity, which is Blood, Duke Nukem, and Shadow Warrior. I played all the Doom games, all the Quake games. I've also played Dusk and the New Blood guys also. So I'm pretty familiar with the genre. I just find it just clicks with me quite well.
I always wanted to play. I think there was a port of Blood for 3DO when I was a kid, and I looked at it, I was like, I think that game looks cool, and I never got around to playing Blood. But at least we're getting the that Night Dive remaster of PO. It's talking about boomer shooters. I'm very excited about that. I think I might be the only person in games media excited about the remaster of PO, and I'm going to make sure everybody else hears about it. Go ahead, Gerber.
Yeah, my experience of, well, boomer shooters, I suppose, like others, I'd have played, the first 4 or 5 levels of, the likes of Duke Nukem or Redneck Rampage, because you weren't supposed to play that game. But I wouldn't have a great affinity for the genre as such.
And I guess my next question is, what do people have much experience with Warhammer, especially Warhammer 40K? Because I do not. I've played like normal Warhammer, they made that MMO Dawn of Reckoning or whatever way back when. I played a little bit of that, but 40K, not really. Now, of course, I know like StarCraft is basically just Warhammer 40K in a lot of ways, and you definitely see that here. So I had no like affinity for this franchise or real like kind of history with it, but it was still interesting. Go ahead, Adam GC.
Yep, same. I know next to nothing about Warhammer. I know Warhammer was the figures that people painted growing up, and that's about it. But you don't need it. Totally good without.
Yeah, it definitely didn't seem necessary. I was kind of able to pick up on certain things easily enough. Go ahead, Matt.
I think the first 40K thing I ever really dealt with was probably Space Marine when that came out. I guess like 2016 or so. I think around now. I think that's probably when it came out. I don't actually know. But that was really cool, and I knew of some Warhammer stuff because I had friends who did some Warhammer things, but I never really got into it though.
Yeah, it's like Space Marine should be my one kind of basis for understanding this stuff, and somehow I never even played that. I know there's some beloved strategy games based off of 40K. I somehow completely missed all of those also. So I feel kind of bad about it, but I am glad I got to finally play one of these games here. Go ahead, Demonic.
Myself, so my first encounter with Warhammer 40K was back when 5th edition released, and like I was like still like a kid, and then like I properly got myself into the hobby and started to actually paint and build models around 7th edition. If you're curious, we are currently in the 10th edition of the board game.
Yeah, the
So-
woke edition, right?
Uh,
I'm glad I played this game so I had some basic understanding when that whole stupid thing happened.
you see, the thing is, Game Workshop has a tendency of going back and forth on what they consider canon. So for us fans, it's always like okay, you say this one time and then you change it to this. So it's always like a back and forth trying to figure like exactly what's like what as fans we should be considered as, like this is like the how this year should move forward properly.
Gotcha. Gerbear, go ahead.
My experience of 40K would probably be just Dawn of War Souls. I think the last expansion was Soulstorm, so I played through the campaign with all the expansions because that was around the time Steam started doing great sales. So I was like, oh, buy this game and all the expansions for €8. So I was like, I played through that campaign, so I had some experience of the characters and stuff, but I wouldn't know the actual lore or anything of that.
And again, like that stuff doesn't really seem to matter a whole ton here. You kind of get the idea. You're one space jerk, and you're fighting a bunch of other space jerks. I guess that's kind of like the one thing I took away from my first experience of Warhammer 40K. It's like, oh, this is one of those everybody sucks kind of universes, which I think it'd be interesting, especially when it's played for laughs. And it seems like a lot of it is played for laughs here sometimes. Maybe not exactly in my wheelhouse, but still was a fun setting. And it was fun playing as this character specifically, who was very much an FPS hero. It's so much of it. I mean, look, let's just talk about it right now. Is there anything better in this game than the taunt button, right? There's just a button designated for taunting, and there are like something like hundreds of different things you can say. I don't know. There's a lot. You're not going to hear a repeat usually. So you can just sit there and spam that taunt button, or you can kind of like work it into what you're doing. Like sometimes I would kill one person and taunt them before I kill someone else, or like before a boss, before charging in there, I'd maybe throw in that taunt first just to make myself feel a little bit better about it. Adam GC, go ahead.
So I totally forgot that the taunt button existed for most of my playthrough of this game, just because most of the time, you're in one of those frantic purge zones. It's like you barely have half a second to stop and taunt. So I kind of feel bad that I missed out on that aspect of it. But the handful of times I did remember, yes, it was very fun.
One of the big things I want to talk about here, and we'll just talk about this up ahead because I think it's something on a lot of people's mind. I like this game. I liked it a good amount, and yet one of the very rare Game Club games I did not finish. It felt long for what it is. Again, as this kind of, simple-ish boomer shooter, it just seemed like I kept feeling like this must be done by now, right? Because it wasn't really introducing any new ideas at certain points. And it has that old school FPS episode structure, right? I think there's 3 of them, where it's kind of like each is each is their own game in some way. Like when you start a new episode, you kind of start back to scratch with what kind of guns you have and whatnot. So something about that pacing and just the game length felt a little bit off to me. Again, I guess it's a better value for the game to be longer. When I say it's long, it's not like it's some 30-hour game or something like that. But again, for just what this was, I was surprised it was as big as it was. Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, I looked up the time to beat before I went in. I think it said like 8 to 9 hours. And through the first chapter or whatever, I must have took at least 10 hours just getting my bearings. So I was like, oh shit, this is going to take a long time. Once I got my bearings, though, I was kind of back on an 8 to 9 hour pace, sort of like a half hour per level, and that felt pretty good. But there are a lot of levels. It is quite long, and yeah, aside from like switching up the loadouts, there is not really a ton that's new.
Did you beat it, Adam GC? And
I did beat it. Yes.
don't worry, nobody's going to capture you for their soundboard here.
I get to keep my game club card.
That's that's good.
yeah.
I lost. I think the very first game we did was a Bug Fable, and I didn't beat that, so I lost my card immediately.
Okay.
Don't worry. Matt, did I see you off mute there for a second?
Sorry, sneezing.
Well, you're good. Go for it. I believe in you. Here, I'm offering you support, but that's helping you. Come on, Matt.
All right,
you
we're
can
good
sneeze.
now.
All right, good. All right, gotcha. So yeah, what do you think about the length and things, the pacing and things like that? You gotta let me know. Did you beat it?
No, I didn't. I ended up giving
One
up
of
in the
us.
third act.
One.
I know.
I like that.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just too long. It just goes too long. That was my problem. I think I told you this when you first started streaming. I was like, the game's great. It has a really good feel to it. It goes too long. The maps are just a bit like when they're not the ones that you kind of like follow a path, they end up being a bit awkward. But like this was what is it? Auric Dream or Auric whatever Dreams or whatever company.
Auric, I think just Auric Digital.
Auric Digital's first like non-RTS and or board game they've ever made, and I'm like for that, and I'm like, this is a really good game. Like this has some things where it's like, oh, a sequel to this should kick. Like it should just be great because they'll be able to like shorten the game, point it in the right direction, give us a map, and really make this thing rock.
I was pretty shocked there wasn't a map. Again, I know some boomer shooters don't have a map. A lot of them do, like Dark Forces.
Doom, you had a map in Doom. Come on.
Yeah. So, and I would get lost a lot, honestly. And that is such a difficult thing with any first-person shooter, especially boomer shooter ones, right? Because so many of those old ones were kind of labyrinths and mazes. So I guess you want to be true to that sometimes. But I do agree that I think I liked this game more when it was actually just being linear. Like we got Doom 2016, right? Which is open-ish, but you don't get, unless you're like looking for secrets or whatnot, you don't get lost in that game. Not really. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, I stopped getting lost as much once I learned to follow the stupid yellow paint. So I guess that stuff works. I would say in general that the level design in this game is pretty meh. It was really those purge sections that I found the most fun in, just being surrounded by hordes of gross looking things and shooting them. That was when this game was at its best.
Yeah, that's right. The purge section, that's kind of when you're sort of just stuck in a battle arena. It is, hey, bunch of enemies are coming, go and kill them all. Like, yeah, that actually always felt great. Just shooting stuff was very good. Go ahead, Demonic.
I found the pace in the game was to be decent. The maps were at times I did find labyrinthy. Overall, I found the map level variety to be decent, and like thinking, okay, for a Forge world, I'm like going to areas which I would expect I would want to go into. Like I'm not sure. Can I spoil some of the areas, or is
Oh,
that
go for it.
like once like in third act, once you start like going into the fort area, I thought it was a cool like idea of like how some maps are more um, vertical than horizontal, which I thought was like a neat idea of like how to design a map.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't make it. I think Act 3 is the one I didn't get to, so I didn't make it to that point. Honestly, like I have a hard time remember, like it's been a little bit, right? So it's hard for me to like distinguish between one level or another anymore from where I am. Go ahead, Gerbear.
Yeah, I think the problem as much as anything is the first chapter is definitely the weakest in terms of level design because there's really nothing happens. Whereas even because in chapter 2 there's like canyon mag rails, which that has a neat set piece, and then again in chapter 3 it starts off with the heresy lurks. So that's in chapter 2. Sorry, smelting decks. That's chapter 3, where you're kind of like I said, you're going up into the ship as opposed to just I'm going to go all the way left and then I'm going to go all the way right. And again, that was where chapter 1 really fell down. That there was just a lot of areas that felt the same, and then when they started to play with the design in Sanctum Magistratum, the last level in chapter 1, there was the awful puzzle in it, and I don't think I was the only one who struggled with that because when you look at the achievements on the Xbox version, something like 9% of people got the first achievement, which is basically to end chapter 1 level 7, but it dropped nearly a full 2%, over 1.5% or something, down to 8% of people finished it, got as far as finishing chapter 1. So like a lot of people did just give up.
Interesting. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, that portal puzzle was bullshit.
Gosh, now I'm trying to remember it. Refresh me on the portal puzzle, if you could, Adam.
I think that's what Gerber was referring to. That
Right.
achievement at the end, near the end of the first chapter, that you just keep getting looped into these infinite portals.
Oh, right.
And
Yes.
the solution out of it is like, well, you didn't see the little red cross on the wall up in the corner that you go follow or whatever. It was very stupid.
Right.
But I will agree with Gerber that chapter 1 is definitely the weakest. It picks up. Some of the highlights after that in chapter 2, there's that one where you're like shuttling across the gorge or whatever, which is cool.
Yeah, I did like that. That's right. I like a good gorge in these boomer shares. Reminds me of Team Fortress
Absolutely.
Classic or something, or like Half-Life, right?
Yeah, and then I think, like Demonic was saying, the verticality in some of the third chapter stuff was cool. There's a level where you're going up a giant elevator and you keep coming back into it and doing purge sections in there, and there's another one where you're racing lava up another kind of vertical level, which is really cool.
Gerber, is something else?
Yeah, it's just on the whole idea of the map and things. I just want to ask, was I the only one who, at the very start of the game, assumed that the floating skull thing that was with you was going to guide you through the game?
I 1,000,000% thought that. I thought that's what it would be there for, right? I thought it was going to be like the Dead Space, like, I don't know, pointing thing. Like, oh, this thing's going to like help me get around. Then by the end, I was like, I don't know what this thing's here for. I guess it must just be part of the lore that all of these dudes have one of these. I don't know why there's a floating skull. Must be some Warhammer thing I don't understand. Go ahead, Demonic.
So in Warhammer, servitors are assistant tools. They're usually of someone who's been disowned and their head is turned into like a machine because they're not afforded death. So they must serve internally, and so like, the best way to describe them is they're just the AI butler most of the times in the lore.
Okay. Like, I guess I appreciate their dedication to the lore. I wish there was more of like a gameplay hook with them in this game. Go ahead, Gerber.
Yeah, well, like, if he's your AI butler, he really is Bixby at this stage.
Let's move on to something a bit more positive, and that's kind of just the aesthetics of the game and how it looks. 'Cause I think the game looks fantastic, right? For how these boomer shooters can look with just the really pretty pixel art mixed in with these nice character models. And then just that really fancy modern lighting that makes it all kind of pop more than it ever would have back in the day. But maybe my favorite thing about the game was just how it looked. It was very specific aesthetic that I loved. Go ahead, Adam.
The game looks so good. It so wonderfully captures the charm of how kind of shitty those games look um, by modern standards. Like I said, I'm playing Doom 2016 right now, and that game looks great in its own way, but I'm kind of wishing I was back in the world of Boltgun.
Yeah, I don't. It's like it's hard to say exactly what it is, but just like I think some of the things might even be 3D models and like they look like the old pixels somehow. I think that's part of this universe too, where even though like yeah, it's kind of grim dark, but there are still bright colors, right? Like even your main character, like his armor is blue, and that pops in a really nice way. Just the way all of the enemies look. There's some fun designs there. The lighting and the beams of the different weapons. There's a decent amount of variety. You have like certain places that kind of remind you more of Quake or Doom, and others that like will give you quite a bit of a Hexen vibe, right? There's a lot of Hexen vibes going out here, which I enjoy a lot. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, the game looks great. Also, however they did when how they decided to do the chaos with its like weird shifting everything while you're walking is awesome. It's a like that is the thing this game has going for it. I feel like is it just nails the look. Uh, whatever filter or however they made it, more games should use whatever they did because it looks awesome for this style of like boomer shooter.
Go ahead, Demonic.
Yeah. Overall, I found that like Boltgun, they pretty much have like stay consistent to what the Game Workshop has like viewed the Warhammer like Gothic aesthetic to look like, especially since like this is set on more human world. The human worlds in Warhammer is more super Gothic, so they like did that. I also think that the sprite models are also quite decently well made. And another thing I like is how that especially when you're fighting the chaos demons, there are certain areas, especially with the Zinj demons, there's that the maps there's it looks like everything's starting to blur to like blur and like the colors start waving around, which I thought was a nice little touch considering how it's like described whenever Zinch appears, shit, shit just goes wrong. Everything starts acting funky,
Right.
which I appreciate. They like added that aesthetic flair to it.
Then I guess kind of another factor here is the weapons, right? The loadout here, which is a little bit of a mixed bag for me. I think the bolt gun itself is awesome, and in some ways, I might have been good if it was actually just a bolt gun game. At the length it is, maybe not. Right? Who knows? That was the gun I did enjoy using the most. Like the shotgun kind of felt a little bit weak to me, and there's some other things that weren't memorable. Like the chain sword was neat, and there was kind of a like charge mechanic that I would often forget even existed in the game. And there's like a specific way you're supposed to rev up that chainsaw that was kind of cool, but I also never really quite had a good grasp on it for some reason. Uh, excuse me. Go ahead, Adam.
Oh, I love the chainsaw. I don't mean to keep throwing Doom 2016 under the bus because that is an awesome game, and I'm having a lot of fun with that too. But oh, the chainsaw and bolt gun is uh, I like it a lot more because you don't have to take it out of your inventory. It doesn't need fuel or anything. It's just
Right.
like instant, and I love that like warp mechanic that's tied to it that you can just fly across the map or whatever, uh, instantly go to an enemy to whether you need to get out of harm's way or whatever. Yeah, super fun.
But were you using, or did you find yourself like attached to any of the other like projectile weapons outside of the main bolt gun?
I don't recall having a specific affinity for any one of them. I did appreciate, it's a little confusing at first. Your loadout resets in between chapters,
Right.
which
That's
kind of,
very old school.
yeah. So that kind of threw me at first, but then it was like, okay, I get that it's kind of like forcing me to figure out how to use all of them. And by the end, you have all of them and you know how to use them pretty good.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. The first time you use that the shotgun, you're like, yeah, that feels great. But like then you realize like, oh, it's lower level than the bolt gun, so I can't actually use it on most of these things. And what's the point of it? Why did I get this later than beforehand? Uh, the the leveling system is very odd on how they did it. Or it's just like, yeah, there's one pickup per level where that will buff one gun up a level,
Pretty much
and
always
they're all
use it on the
just
bolt gun, really.
and they're all standard. They're all the same level, no matter what. When you pick them up, it doesn't change anything, and it's like, I don't know if that's really the way I would like to have, some form of like growth or something. It
Yeah,
doesn't feel like I got this new gun. I'm gonna get to do something cool with it. Is the problem?
that
Uh,
leveling system, and so for this game, like your guns have a level and enemies have a level, and if your guns not higher than their level or at least equal to it or something, like you do less damage to them. And it's kind of a weird mechanic. It's like the only slightly RPG-ish mechanic in this game. I don't know if this is I'm trying to like throw in something that made it feel a little bit more like the tabletop game. It was kind of weird, and I don't know what exactly it did to the game's benefit. I wasn't a huge fan of that whole idea. And again, like one thing if it was like Vanquish, right? Again, we did not too long ago, where yeah, you permanently upgrade some of your guns as you're playing through it. But here they aren't permanent. They like if you can upgrade a gun one time, and it's kind of a hidden drop in that level sometimes, and then it's just leveled up for that level. So it was hard to get too excited about that.
yeah.
Yeah. Anything else, Matt?
I really enjoyed the chainsword. Just being able to dash from person to person is pretty rad,
All right.
and it's nice to just get in everyone's face.
Gerber, go ahead.
Yeah, well, like everyone else has said, the bolt gun was really good, and it felt really good as soon as you started to use it because it just sounded thunky, I suppose, for want of a better word. And the shotgun was always just as soon as you got it, you'd assumed it was going to be great for the Nurglings. I think that's right. That it'd have a wider area, but it really was it hit one target. It didn't. There was no spray as such on the shotgun, which is disappointing enough. And by the time you get the grav cannon, that was really good because you didn't get it until chapter 3, and you'd already fought one of the great unclean ones. I'm really struggling with the names of the enemies. So once you got back and fought another one, and you had the grav cannon, and you could just like eat through his health, that felt really enjoyable.
Go ahead, Demonic.
Overall, I thought the weapon choices were decent and just compared they all they all felt like how the overall the lore has described them. My particular favorite gun was the Volkite rifle. That was the death ray gun. You just shoot the laser and it causes guys to just explode, which is like one of those guns that it's is like one of the more less. It's one of the more it doesn't have that much of a it's one more less common guns in like the Warhammer lore and like games. So it's always cool to see one more like rare weapons make a appearance in this like a boomer shooter.
So playing through this, I was kind of wondering, man, I wish there were other franchises that just could easily lend themselves to just being boomer shootered like this, right? Yeah, it's not like Warhammer is some kind of shooting based genre, right? So it was a bit of a surprise. I'm trying to imagine what other things would work. Obviously, StarCraft could immediately come to mind because it basically is just Warhammer 40k. And hey, they tried before to make a StarCraft shooter of some kind, right? Or at least a single player StarCraft game. And it didn't work. Maybe here's one avenue that you could take to it. I don't know if there's any other franchises that anybody would like to see get boomer shooterized like this. I'd go for a Metroid boomer shooter just fine. Hey, let's get real weird and do a Mario boomer shooter even. I don't care. Matt, go ahead.
Make the Halo boomer shooter.
Oh, can you
This
imagine how
thing-
mad the people would
That's-
be?
That is exactly it. It's the game
Yeah.
that changed everyone's opinion on consoles for
what did
being able.
Wouldn't a Halo Boomer Shooter just be Marathon now that I think about it? Not the new Marathon.
You kind of are correct. I mean, they do technically share some things, like the mark, like with the version armor that he wears is a higher mark because of it was found in Marathon and stuff, and the Forerunner are possibly related to both games, but they're also like not officially together from what I remember. But yes, you're right. It is just Marathon. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, God, basically any sci-fi video game franchise would work fine with it. But like, if you want to take a genre, like a series that is a genre that isn't necessarily this, I think if you did like Resident Evil as a boomer shooter, that could be fun. Go ahead, Gerbear.
Well, I was thinking maybe Body Harvest just because it might fit thematically, but also then the idea of just doing EDF as a boomer shooter just seems kind of stupid and enjoyable.
Yeah, just killing all the bugs. The boomer, we call it boomer bugs. That's something to that. I think that's kind of catchy. Go ahead, Demonic.
Here's a crazy pitch because because we have boomer shooters like Heretic, Diablo boomer shooter.
That'd actually be kind of fun. Yeah. Yeah. Another magic based one, right? Look out, Immortals of Avium. Yeah, gosh, I would like to, again, like, sometimes this game was reminding me of Heretic, and I did like those sequences. And I'm not like super well versed in all of the newer boomer shooters. I'm sure some of them are like Heretic, but I would like something that was of that speed. I think actually I think Diablo is a pretty good pick. It can even be like, the Demon Hunter, right? From like Diablo 3. Like that's a class that had a lot of projectile weapons that would shoot pretty rapidly, even. So it's not like it would have to be shoot a single crossbow and reload it kind of thing. Or one of the magic classes. I think that would be fun. I guess I'm going to kind of leave it to the floor now here and see if there's anything else specifically people want to bring up. Again, not this is I think a good game. Obviously, I liked it a good bit. It is also in a lot of ways a simple game, and I think rightfully so. Right? I do sometimes wish there was maybe one or two more mechanics or just ideas here. Again, especially if the game was going to be as long as it was. Go ahead, Adam.
I think it was Wiesman in the Discord who originally said that this is a great warm-up game before your main event, and I totally agree with that. It's also a great wind-down game. I paired this one with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and it was just an excellent way to unwind your brain from thinking about materia combinations for 3 hours.
I could totally see that, because I think 20, 30 minutes is about the length of each of these levels, right? So that's like, hey, yeah, do that after, getting some mapped out. That's bad grammar there, Mike. Mapped out. But getting a map mapped out a bit for Chadley or something like that. Then you go to this, you insult some people, and you bolt gun them to death. I think that could be a pretty pleasant time. Go ahead, Gerbear.
Yeah, it was a great kind of advertisement for Quick Resume because you could just play something with a more substantial campaign and then switch back to Boltgun for a half hour or so. And just a side point, I'm asking, what did everyone else think of the actual platforming in it? Because that I thought was surprisingly good. Just that it always felt like I'm going to aim to jump there. And I always hit it, whereas even in Half-Life and stuff like that, you would line up a jump, you'd make the jump, and sometimes it'd work, and other times you'd just fall to your death.
I like the platform. I could have used more of it, honestly, but I'm a sicko who actually really likes first-person platforming. Or even when it bothers people in other games like Doom Eternal or something, I'm always really into it. So I always like when shooters add a decent amount of that stuff. I think you're right that in this game specifically, it felt pretty good. All of the jumping around. Again, if there's even more of it, I think I would have been happy with that. I think I'm gonna go around and I'll go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was gonna say that, like, in general, my feel on this game is like it is a great first attempt, and I really want a sequel out of this game because I think they can really, tighten everything up to make it where it just hits. So it's like
Tighten up the
that's what I
graphics on level 2.
yeah, exactly. Tighten up the graphics. Actually, no, the graphics are great. But just like tightening up the map design and the feel of the guns and stuff like that. Or I guess most of the guns feel good, but like maybe the leveling up system and things along those lines. And just really can really nail a sequel with this.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, right? I was thinking about like what would I want in a sequel from that. Yeah, I think some of that generic tightening up. And again, like I said, maybe like one or two more mechanics. They should add the AI from Daikatana. I think that would be really exciting. Go ahead, Adam.
Uh,
Oh, go. Sorry, Matt.
Oh,
Finish your thought.
oh, I was gonna say they also just need to have it so Rahul Kali automatically just shouts taunts
Yeah.
after kills instead of just needing to push the taunt button.
Or like I
They
want
should
the.
give you both.
I think it'd be great if the taunt button was actually like a bit more of a mechanic. Like you should get maybe a little buff or something when you do that taunt. I think that
Yes.
would be fantastic. Go ahead, Adam.
Honestly, I was looking at Daikatana. I was like, man, that actually looks kind of fun. I'm on this boomer shooter kick until the AI companion showed up. Okay, no, yeah, I'm not going to check that one out. Just to follow up on what Matt said before, I think this game, you can feel the love in this game for the genre that the developers had, and that shines through the whole time. It is a wonderful homage, and it makes it very enjoyable.
Are there any other kind of final thoughts here on Boltgun now from anybody who wants to say their final piece on this game as we begin wrapping up here? Again, I thought it was a lot of fun. If a game's a little too long for what it is, that's not an awful problem. And I think, especially hearing people here talk about how that third chapter is maybe the best one, I bet someday I will go back and check that out and still have a pretty good time. I'm very glad that this game did get made. I'm glad we had this kind of boomer shooter renaissance. I think Boltgun is a very important piece of that. Go ahead, Matt.
If you are someone who likes 7 out of 10s, this is a very good 7 out
I
of
think
10.
that's a good way of putting it. This is like, yes, this is a 7 out of 10 game in the best ways possible. Or like the stuff that makes it not an 8. It's something egregious, right? It's nothing that's going to really throw you off. It's just little things here and there. Like I said, like the weird leveling system. Oh, it's kind of long for what it is, blah, blah, blah. Things like that. Anyone else? Last call for alcohol. Nope. All right, go ahead, Gerber.
Yeah, it was just because it hadn't been brought up. I thought the last encounter, the very level 8, I thought that was a really good boss fight because it was the first time he had multiple health bars as such. But it was a great summation of what the game was. You had access to all the guns, you fought all the heavy bosses, and you got to use just a full-on combat arena for the entirety of the level, as opposed to going, I have to go find the blue key. Well, the blue key for this door, and just there was no aimless running around. It was just like you tooled up, you went into the combat area, and you had basically 15 minutes to beat this lad, and that was it.
Yeah, boss fights in the first-person shooters are always interesting because they're kind of hard to do. They're kind of difficult to find ways to do them where it's not just bullet sponges, right? So any game that can do interesting boss fights, I always do appreciate that. Boss fights in general, I think, is an underappreciated art form in gaming. All right, everybody. I think that's a wrap on Warhammer 40k Boltgun. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. The Game Mess Game Club's next title is the original Psychonauts. We're going to be discussing that at the end of June, actually. Our Game Club is probably going to become more of a one game every 2 month sort of thing. Give us all a bit more time to play through these games and then make sure we have time to do other things. I have a lot of traveling coming up. I have multiple trips to LA for various things. And look at my poor wrist. I hurt my wrist, and that's, another excuse. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you to Boltgun for being a fun time. We'll see you next time here on the Game Mess Game Club. Thank you.